Welcome to the next video in our Intro to Tarot series. Today we're going to be talking about the minor arcana. Now we're not individually going to go through every single card in the minor arcana because it is a large grouping of cards and I only have a certain amount of time in a YouTube video to discuss this, but also because a lot of your work with the minor arcana is going to be based on, again, your intuition and how you relate to the cards. What I do want to discuss today about the minor arcana to get you started in your relationship with this large grouping of cards in the tarot are the elements and the numerology that's associated with each of the numbers that comprise the different suits in the minor arcana. So to keep my own focus, I do have some notes that I will be referencing. But what I would like you to do now, or whenever you have time to actually really delve into the minor arcana, is to take the sets of each suit, which, like we talked about with the court cards, will be typically wands, cups, swords, and then pentacles. And take each of the 10 cards out for each suit and place them in numbered order. So that's going to be ace through 10. What I found most helpful when I started working with the minor arcana was to lay them all out in order by each suit so that I could see the progression of the story through the 10 cards. And that is really important with the minor arcana. If you actually just take the time to sit down and examine the story that's occurring in each of the cards, you'll often be able to keep that story in your own mind, and then through your intuition, when you're actually looking at the cards in a spread, you can remember what the step is in that story where you are. Like, for instance, the Three of Swords has to do with sorrow, mental anguish, and loss. And if you see that card in a spread, if you've looked at the whole story arc of the swords as a suit, you know where you are in the place of the story with the swords. So that's often very helpful to do. So that's what I would recommend that you do at this point. And then sit down with your journal and write down your feelings for the story. What is the story as a whole? And it doesn't have to be a long story. It can be just a brief representation of the story so that you can look back through your journal and go over that. See how the story changes for you as your relationship with tarot grows. And also how the story started out for you as you began your relationship with tarot. So write down the story arc that you see with each of the 10 cards with the suit. And then some keywords and phrases for each of the 10 cards, as well as, just like you did with the major arcana, perhaps your favorite card and your least favorite card for each of the suits. This is a way to really help you to get to know them. And again, meditation with your least favorite and your favorite to start out with, then branching out into all the other cards with the minor arcana is an excellent exercise as well to get to know the cards. So, when you're done with that exercise, then it's helpful to take a look at the elements that are associated with each of the suits. So typically in tarot, you'll find that when you open up your brand new deck, the wands come first. But I want to start looking at it as if we were looking at the medicine wheel or the Celtic elemental wheel, if we're looking at that. So what we're going to do is start in the east with the swords. So the swords elementally, if you're looking at it in Native American wisdom, they hold the space in the east of the medicine wheel, and they are comprised mainly of the element of air. And we know air, if you're looking at it elementally through a pagan viewpoint, air often represents thought. Through a Native American viewpoint, it also represents new beginnings. So the element of air and the suit of swords is really all about your thoughts and what you choose to create into your reality. I'm just going to look down at my notes briefly to make sure that I'm covering what I want to cover here. So a lot of what they talk about is the ego, perception, thought, your mind, your confidence, your decisiveness. What actions are you choosing to take and how does that play out? They talk about difficulties, fears, prejudices can come into it. And the effect that your mind and what you choose to focus on and where you choose to take your thoughts, how that plays out into your reality. So let's just take a look really quickly at the suit of swords. This is the Shadowscapes Tarot. This is the Ace. And aces are, again, new beginnings. If you're looking at it through the numerological order, okay, so we're talking about new beginnings here. We're also talking about the expression of the suit in its most untapped natural state. So there we see the Ace of Swords. There's that blooming, blossoming possibility of creation through your thought process. This is, let me just make sure, the Two of Swords. So in numerology, as we're looking at the twos, we can see that this is about balance, duality, and crossroads. And you can see with the Two of Swords that there is a choice that needs to be made. And yet, being afraid to make the choice can be holding you back. So numerologically, now we move on to the Three of Swords, and this is like I just mentioned. Threes are going to be oftentimes a fullest expression of the suit. It's like the first act of creation in the suit, the first act of full creation that you're experiencing. And this is about loss, anguish, sadness, and a need to let go in order to heal. Then we have the Four of Swords. Now the fours are about structure, stability, and at other times they can represent stagnation. It's the next step after the creation has been put forth out into the world. What happens to it then? So then we have the Five of Swords. Now, 5 is often a number of instability, difficulty, loss, but also it talks about an opportunity for change, and you can see that with the Five of Swords here as well. I'm not really going to go into each detailed meaning for each of the cards. I'm just going to kind of give you the numerological overview, and we're using the swords as the example for that. So from the 5 and the difficulty that we faced in the 5s, we move into the 6s, and the 6s are about communication, problem solving, cooperation, but also a lot of times they can be about after the loss and appreciation for what you do have and stopping to take the time out for that. So there's the Six of Swords. Then we have the Seven of Swords. Now again, 7 is another number of reflection, assessment, talking about your motives, but also looking back at what you've created and stopping to see, again, reflecting, but stopping to see what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what you want to change. 7s are a very interesting number, numerologically, and especially in the tarot and the minor arcana. Then with the Eight of Swords, we have movement, action, change, and power. With the 8s, we see what happens after that pause for reflection and looking back at what we've created. Then what do we bring to it next? Then with the Nine of Swords, there's the fruition and attainment within each suit. What does it come down to? You know, all of this work that we've done. And then with the 10s, just like in the major arcana, the last card being that of completion, the end of the cycle. So you can see the storyline carried throughout the element of air that we just took a look at, as well as the numerological importance in the minor arcana. Now, with major, we know we're talking about the big secrets, the big truths that we face in our life, the bigger archetypes. With the minor arcana, we're talking about kind of smaller, not that they're less important, but it's down to more of a personal level, day-to-day existence. And also there's more of a personal and self-control that you can exert to changing what you've created and what is most likely to occur if you continue on your same path. So while some readers choose not to use the minor arcana, I think that they certainly do have importance in a reading, and they're very important as our own spiritual tools. They can give us really deep, important messages that are almost more flexible in a way as we're looking at a spread than the major arcana and the court cards. So from the element of air, which is about that kind of spirituality and thought process, what we're dwelling on, what we're focusing on creates our reality. That space of new beginnings and thought, where we move down to the south on the medicine wheel, which is the element of fire, if you're going to look at it through a pagan way of viewing it. So with fire comes, of course, passion and creativity. And spirituality again, but almost a more visceral version of spirituality. That's what we're looking at when we're taking a look at the wands. It's all about that action that's necessary and moving and forward movement. And then again, looking at it numerologically, is the forward movement, is the need for action, is that kind of brash, just stepping out. How is that serving you? What is it creating? What are you creating with that energy? So you see that journey unfolding through the suit of the wands, the ace through the 10. And again, going through the numerology, with the ones we have the new beginnings. With the 2s, there's that duality, that search for balance. With the 3s, we see the first and most full expression of what we've created. And again, the correlation to the 3s in the minor arcana would be the Empress. So it's like that creation that comes forth and the first expression of that creation. Then we have the 4s, which are the stability, but can also be stagnation. With the 5s, we have, again, looking at the fear, learning the lessons, conflict and loss can also come up. However, with that, the opportunity for change. With the 6s, we have that moment where we are appreciating all that we have from stepping out of that place of loss. Communication's involved. Also, cooperation is involved with the 6s. It's a very positive moment in the wheel. From the 6s, we step into the 7s, which are, again, a time for reflection. We're pausing, we're taking a look at our motives, we're assessing what we've created and if it's worth focusing on and continuing to create, or is it time now to step into a different way of creating, using the energy of the element of fire in this case. Is it time to use that in a different way, or is it time to be patient and continue following the path that we've started charting? So from that movement in the 7s, we move into the 8s, which are about movement, action, and power and change. From the 8s, we step into the 9s. Again, it's fruition. It's attaining what you set out to when you started out with that untapped energy in the ace. From the 9s of the attainment stage, we step into the completion and the end of the cycle, and we're preparing to step back into the ace of the suits. So use the numerology to apply with the elements in the wands, which is fire. So again, go through that, write down the storyline, take a look at the picture that the wands are telling. In the next video in our series, we're going to talk about the last 2 suits in the minor arcana, which are the cups and the pentacles. So I will see you in that video. Thank you for watching. Bye.